it's Maria from B&H.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I heard you were here packing your stuff away, and I wanted to ask you 21 questions. Do you have some time?
Let's do it.
All right, first I need to know, who is this over here sitting next to you?
This is my set pet, Stella.
Amazing. And so what are you shooting today?
I'm shooting a beauty editorial, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. And for somebody who travels a lot for their job, how have you been adapting to this pandemic?
It's been tricky. I think everyone would agree with that. I'm an international photographer, so before that I was on a plane almost every month to London.
Wow.
So yeah, I've had to adapt, but I've been able to be more creative and work on a lot more personal projects.
So what got you started in photography?
Started at 14, which seems like a long time ago. And I suddenly came across photography during my final exams at school, started using myself as a self-portrait artist, and found fine art photography, which later led me to fashion photography.
Awesome. And what was your first camera?
My first camera was actually a Canon Digital Rebel.
Ooh. And what's your go-to camera and lens now?
I use the Canon R5, and I have to say I love the 85 1.2, and I use the 100mm macro for my beauty shoots almost on every shoot.
Wow. And you're a Canon Explorer of Light, right?
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
It's an honor to join such a prestigious program of ambassadors. I've used Canon for my entire life, and it was always one of those dreams of mine to be sponsored by them. So it's fantastic.
That's great. What drew you to fashion and beauty photography specifically?
I started with fine art photography and immediately became drawn to styling aspects and trends, which all of a sudden led me to fashion photography upon discovery of that. And I've been shooting fashion for over 10 years now.
So you capture the faces of so many women. What is something you've learned along the way?
To always make sure that the person in front of the lens feels comfortable and beautiful, no matter who they are, whether it's a more experienced model, whether it's talent, whether it's a very new face. They're always strangers in front of your lens, so whatever you can do to make them feel comfortable and open up.
Absolutely. So this month is International Women's Month. Why do you think it's important to celebrate women in the industry and in general?
When I first got into the industry, there was really no female kind of role models, and I often questioned whether I could make it in the industry because of that, because it was so male dominated. Over the past few years, I've definitely seen that change and a lot more women step up, a lot more role models, a lot more speaking out. I just think it's fantastic in general that women are stepping up and, you know, owning themselves and in the jobs they're in.
Absolutely. So do you have any projects you're working on or coming up?
I'm working on a lot more beauty projects. It's something I kind of fell in love with last year, was beauty photography and jewelry. It's easier to create in that space in a controlled environment, and especially during the pandemic, shooting in small teams. So I'm doing a lot more beauty lately.
And you don't just shoot, you also educate, right?
I do.
Tell me about Lara Jade Education.
So I started teaching around 10 years ago, and it really was because when I got into the industry, they felt like there was a red curtain around the industry, and no one really wanted to let you have a peek in. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to make that change as a female photographer to kind of, you know, show that you can actually get into the commercial industry and it's easier than you think. So yeah, education for me is something that I do, as well as, you know, being busy as a photographer. And I love that I'm able to switch roles as educator and photographer.
Okay, switching it up a little bit. What are some tips for somebody looking to stand out as a portrait and fashion photographer?
I think the first thing is finding your voice, or understanding what that voice is with your style, because if you understand your style, then you understand how to market that and try to stand out with your marketing efforts. I would also say don't underestimate the power of social media and how it can work for you. And also try and find your niche early on, whether that's you're trying to find a specific style or theme, you know, understanding the market you're in, maybe there's something you can offer that's something a little different. I'd say that's probably the best advice I can give.
That's great. I saw you did a self-portrait challenge during the height of lockdown. Was that fun, being in front of the camera?
So I started my career actually being in front of the camera. It's how I gained my confidence as a shy teenager and really just got me building my portfolio. So, you know, I abandoned that side of things once I became more confident and into fashion photography, and now I work with teams. But I was kind of forced to create during, you know, lockdown, and I'm an artist. So getting in front of the camera and rediscovering my roots and, you know, doing everything myself was actually really refreshing, and I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. And what has been one of the most challenging shoots you've done?
Ooh, I'd say in terms of challenging shoots, there's never been something that's like been really challenging like the whole day and we've had to rearrange things. I'd say that the things that get challenging is sometimes when there's a weather issue and you're on location and you have to do a plan B and you have to shoot through the rain, or it's just a really long day and you're in the heat and everybody is exhausted and hot. So I always have a plan B. That's one thing I can give you from one big fashion photography tip is, you know, working as a producer yourself as well, always having that plan B.
Absolutely. What has been the coolest shoot you've done?
I got to fly to Paris 2019 or 2020 to shoot for Vogue Japan, which was one of my you know, dream clients. And I remember sitting on the plane and just being like, is this real? I got to fly it with my makeup artist friend, and just being able to go to Paris and do such a beautiful shoot on location has to be one of my most memorable.
That's so cool. And is there a model or magazine that is on your photography bucket list?
Ooh, yes, I love Porter magazine, which is by Net-a-Porter, du jour. I love any Harper's Bazaar is always on my bucket list. Yeah, any of those. I think they all just know how to do things really well, minimalist and just classic and timeless work.
Perfect. Let's hope they're watching.
Yes.
And if you could use only one lens forever, which would it be?
I think actually the 50mm 1.2 I would say is probably my most versatile for full length portraits. Apart from the 85, I'd say that's the one that's on my lens the most, on my camera the most.
And if you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
When I was younger, I wanted to be a marine biologist or a vet or a nurse. So anything where it was to do with caring for someone or anything scientific, but I just wasn't good at those things at school.
And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I would say that the quote, personal inspiration will always be the defining point in finding your style. You have to love what you do, especially when you put in a lot of hours, sometimes unpaid into it. So, you know, try and infuse your personal taste and interest with your photography style because you will grow so much more.
And aside from your camera and lens, what's your favorite piece of gear?
I'd say favorite piece of gear is my 5-foot Octobox. I use Broncolor lights and I use the 5-foot Octobox for a lot of shoots. It's such a great piece of equipment. With the diffuser on it or without, it's very versatile and very flattering for all subjects.
Yeah. And if there were to be a movie about your life, who would play you?
I want to say Margot Robbie, but that's probably just because of how she looks. Helena Bonham Carter, just because she's interesting.
And last question, who should we interview next?
I know you have a lot of requests to interview Sue Bryce.
Yeah, we actually already interviewed her.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, so my good friend Emily Soto, who does fantastic film and fashion photography work.
Perfect, we'll call her right up.
Great, so I'm gonna finish packing and get everything sorted for the shoot.
Okay, let me get out of your hair. Thank you so much for answering all my questions.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Have a good day.